Om.
You are in mute.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Offering our salutations to Ramana, who shines as the self in every being, we begin today's Saturday Satsang with a prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh, followed by the chanting of the Muktaka trayam by Sri Nandakumarji.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमां रमणाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां शुक्लां वरदरं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय नमो रमण।
एकम् अक्षरं हृदि निरन्तरं भासते स्वयं लिख्यते कथम् हृदयकुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता वा पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मनष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। नमो रमण।
Namo Ramana. In the next part of the satsang, we have the chanting of a few verses from Upadesa Saram, which will be done by Kumari Uma Shripati and Srimati Ashwini Balaji.
वायुरोधना लीयते मना जालपक्षिवद्रोतसाधनं चित्तवायवाश्चित्क्रियायुताः शाकयोर्द्वयी शक्तिमूलका लयविनाशने उभयरोदने लयगतं पुनर्भवति मूर्तं प्राणबन्धनात् नीनमानसम् एकचिन्तना नाशमेत्यद नष्टमानस उत्कृष्टयोगिना कृत्यमस्ति किं स्वस्तिकिं यत दृश्यवारितं चित्तमात्मना चित्वदर्शनं तत्त्वदर्शनं मानसं तु किं मार्गणे कृते नैव मानसं मार्ग आर्जवात् वृत्तयस्त्वहं वृत्तिमाश्रिताः वृत्तयो मनो विद्यहं मद अहमयं कुतो भवति चिन्वत ऐपतद्यहं निजविचारणम् अहमिनाशभा जहमहं तया स्फुरतिरत्स्वयं परमपूर्णस।
Namo Ramana. We move on with the Ramananjali Sangeetam presentations by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh, followed by a song by Savitri Krishnan and Jayasriram Krishnan.
Namo Ramana to all. Today I'll be singing a song written by Sri Sadhom Swami, and the music is by Srimati Sulochana Natarajan. Arunagirisha Ramanesha Ahandai Vinasha Ramanesha Arutparamesha Ramanesha Anmapurisha Ramanesha Brahmaswarupa Ramanesha Bhiti Vinasha Ramanesha Yammuyinesha Ramanesha Idaya Vilasa Ramanesha Arunagirisha Ramanesha Ahandai Vinasha Ramanesha Arutparamesha Ramanesha Anmapurisha Ramanesha Jagadgurunatha Ramanesha Shiva Gurunatha Ramanesha Sukhagadiboda Ramanesha Sumana Vinoda Ramanesha Arunagirisha Ramanesha Ahandai Vinasha Ramanesha Arutparamesha Ramanesha Anmapurisha Ramanesha महर्षि भगवान रमणेश माता दाता रमणेश अहमः स्फुरणा रमणेश अहमपहरणा रमणेश अरुणगिरीश रमणेश अहन्दै विनाश रमणेश अरुट्परमेश रमणेश आत्मपुरीश रमणेश आत्मपुरीश रमणेश आत्मपुरीश रमणेश. नमो रमण.
அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி கண்ணால் என் உள்ளத்தை தூண்டி கண்ணால் என் உள்ளத்தை தூண்டி அருள் காதலால் கண்ணீரை கக்க வைத்தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி தாய் தந்தை சாமியுமானான் குரு தாரக நாமமும் தன் பெயரானான் தாய் தந்தை சாமியுமானான் குரு தாரக நாமமும் தன் பெயரானான் வாய் வந்து வாழ்த்திட வைத்தான் வாய் வந்து வாழ்த்திட வைத்தான் வேறு வாழ்வருமாறின் மனத்தை சுவைத்தான் அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி ரமணன் என்னும் பெயராலே அனுராகம் நெழுங்கூரல் நாதத்தினாலே ரமணன் என்னும் பெயராலே அனுராகம் நெடுங்கூரல் நாதத்தினாலே அமல அருள் கணையாலே அமல அருள் கணையாலே என்னை அடியோடு கொள்ளை அடித்ததனாலே அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி சோனமலை பெயராலே அதில் சொக்கி கிடக்கும் சுகமயத்தாலே சோனமலை பெயராலே அதில் சொக்கி கிடக்கும் சுகமயத்தாலே காணவரும் பலராலே காணவரும் பலராலே இவன் கண்ணன் என்றே ஆசை காட்டிதனாலே அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி கண்ணால் என் உள்ளத்தை தூண்டி கண்ணால் என் உள்ளத்தை தூண்டி அருள் காதலால் கண்ணீரை கக்கவை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அண்ணாமலை ரமணாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி அருணாச்சலனார் பிறப்பாழியை தாண்டி. ஓம் நமோ பகவதே.
நமோ ரமணா. The two songs which were chosen to be offered today were written by Sadhu Om Swami, whose birth centenary we are celebrating this year, and we are also celebrating the birth centenary of one more great devotee of Bhagavan Ramana, Kanakammal, and we get to learn the experiences and their experiences in the presence of Bhagavan Ramana, of these great devotees like Sadhu Om Swami and Kanakammal, in the publications which are published by Ramanashramam and also Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning. We have a reading and a sharing session by Nandakumarji from one of such publications from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning.
Namo Ramana. In this, the book reading segment of our satsang, we continue our readings from Forever is in the Now, the timeless message of Shri Ramana Maharshi, edited and compiled by our founder president, Shri A.R. Natarajanji. We had commenced the third segment of the work called the Confluence, and we had read through the author's article on confluence of peace and power that Bhagavan is. We get on to the articles under this final segment. The first one is by Swami Abhishektananda. Abhishektananda is introduced to us by the book as Swami Abhishektananda, a Christian monk who had been attracted to the Advaitic experience, author of several books, Satchidananda, The Secret of Arunachala, Further Shore, and Guru and Disciple. The article is entitled Ramana Takes Over. Ramana Takes Over by Swami Abhishektananda. Purusha and I, in our turn, saluted the Maharshi respectfully with joined hands and took our seat among the crowd. First of all, I concentrated on looking with deep attention at this man of whom I had read and heard so much. This visit could not fail to be a high point in my life. Since the moment when it had been decided upon, I had looked forward with eager and growing impatience to the hour when I should have the opportunity of being in the Maharishi's presence. Something had to take place. When once a physical contact was established between myself and him. Of that, I had not the slightest doubt. This man had a message for me, a message which, if not conveyed in human words, would at least be spiritually communicated. For, as it had been clearly explained to me, spoken words were the least important of the ways by which the sage communicated his experience. However, despite my fervent expectation, or rather, perhaps precisely because of it, I felt let down, and in my disappointment, sadness filled my heart. The story of Emmaus is constantly repeated at great moments of men's lives, especially when they come to them after they have had made up their minds and that the things are going to turn out in such and such a fashion, having worked it all out on rational principles. This Emmaus is a place where the disciples of Jesus Christ are walking to. Of course, we are reading through the article of a Christian monk. And Emmaus is the place where the disciples are walking to, where the resurrected Jesus Christ walks with them and they are not able to recognize him. And after a long time, after some coaxing by the immortal one. Finally, at MAS, they understand who he is. That is the indication given here by Swami Abhishektananda, that though he was walking with the immortal one, he could not recognize. And that is because he had some certain fixed ways in which he thought the truth will reveal itself. That very thinking that truth has to come to me in this way was blocking him, was what he is saying. We continue. I continued to gaze intently at Ramana, who was nearing 70, with his gentle face and beautiful eyes. What was there more to him? His complexion was fair, as is usually the case with South Indian Brahmins, of a golden bronze tint. His body was bare, as is the custom among true ascetics. Apart from the kaupinam, a narrow strip of cotton worn as loincloth, he was sitting on his couch with his legs extended, though sometimes he drew one up and rested an outstretched arm on his knee, a posture which seemed to be a favorite of his. Sometimes he read a book or a magazine. Sometimes he corrected proofs from the press. Sometimes he listened to what appeared to be the reading of his mail, showing his reaction by an occasional movement of the head. At 11 o'clock, the gong sounded for the meal. Following behind Bhagwan, we all made our way to the refectory. Refectory is the common eating place in a religious center. Purusha and I, as this was our first meal, had the privilege of being seated exactly in front of him. Naturally, all the time I was eating, my eyes scarcely ever left him. So eager was I to discover his secret. He was sitting on the floor just like us, ate with his fingers from a plantain leaf as we did, and had exactly the same food as ours. This was a principle that he maintained inflexibly. Since the beginning of his tapas, he had always vehemently refused to touch anything that could not be shared freely with all and sundry. Sometimes he made a remark to those who were serving the food, no doubt commenting on its quality or its source, and he seemed to be eating with a good appetite. Once again, and without doubt, I could see him as an excellent grandfather. But the halo? In vain I strained my eyes trying to see it. All my efforts were useless. After the midday meal, Purusha took me to meet Miss Ethel, whom he had met on a previous visit. She asked for my impressions, and as I did not want to conceal the truth, I told her of my disappointment. You have come here with far too much baggage, she said. You want to know, you want to understand. You are insisting that what is intended for you should necessarily come to you by the path which you have determined. Instead, you should make yourself empty. Simply be receptive. Make your meditation one of pure expectation. Pure expectation, of course, means no expectation, just being empty. Did I really try to make myself empty on the lines suggested by Ethel? Or rather, was it the fever itself that had got the better of all my efforts to meditate and reason? So he must have landed with the fever, which must have been there in the preceding part of the article. When the Vedas began again, their spell carried me off much further from the things and from myself that had been the case on the previous evening. This carrying away from myself, what he means is that perhaps that from his concepts of the path in which the truth has to come to him. The Vedas do that they free you of your ego. The fever, my sleepiness, a condition that was half dreaming, seemed to release me in the zones of para-consciousness, in which all that I saw or heard aroused overwhelmingly powerful echoes. Even before my mind was able to recognize the fact and still less to express it, the invisible halo of the sage had been perceived by something in me deeper than my words. Unknown harmonies awoke in my heart. I'll read that particular sentence again. Even before my mind was able to recognize the fact and still less to express it, the invisible halo of the sage had been perceived by something in me deeper than any words. Unknown harmonies awoke in my heart. A melody made itself felt, and especially an all-embracing ground bass, the Shruti note perhaps. In the sage of Arunachala of our own times, I had discerned the unique sage of the eternal India, the unbroken succession of sages, her ascetics, her seers. It was as if the very soul of India penetrated to the very depths of my own soul and held mysterious communion with it. It was a call which pierced through everything, rent it in pieces, and opened a mighty abyss. By the evening, I knew that I had to leave. The fever was getting worse, and it would have been impossible to burden the ashram with an invalid when there was such a flood of visitors. Again, the half hour of jolting in the bullock cart, an exhausting night on the railway, in crowded compartments, when twice I had to change trains. Next morning, I simply fell into bed and stayed there for 3 days, unable to move. But if the body was there, stretched out under the bedclothes, the spirit was still at Sri Ramana's ashram. In my ears, the Vedic chants, as I had heard them there, still continued to sound. Before my eyes still danced the picture of the old man stretched out on his couch and of the crowd which pressed devotedly round him. In my feverish dreams, when I was neither fully awake nor fully asleep, it was the Maharishi who unremittingly appeared to me. The Maharishi accompanied by all the sages and all the gurus. The Maharishi bringing the true India, which no time can contain, and of which he was for me the living and compelling symbol. My dreams also included attempts, always in vain, to incorporate in my previous mental structures without shattering them these powerful new experiences which my contact with the Maharishi had brought to birth. New as they were, their hold on me was already too strong for it ever to be possible for me to disown them. When I came to myself again after those days of fever, I realized to what a depth in myself this first meeting with Sri Ramana had penetrated as part of the mystery of Arunachala. The last paragraph once again. When I came to myself again after those days of fever, I realized to what a depth in myself this first meeting with Sri Ramana had penetrated as part of the mystery of Arunachala. We take up the next article, a little bit of it perhaps, The Impact by Paul Brunton. Paul Brunton is well known to the devotees of Bhagwan, but let me read the introduction. Paul Brunton, the best known writer on the Maharishi, his search in secret India made Ramana and his teachings popular in the West. His book Secret Path was also inspired by Ramana. He is the author of 11 books in his lifetime. 16 books have been published posthumously. The Impact, Paul Brunton. 40 years have passed since I walked into his abode and saw the Maharishi half reclining, half sitting on a couch. After such a long period, most memories of the past become somewhat faded if they do not lose their existence altogether. But I can truthfully declare that in his case, nothing of the kind has happened. On the contrary, his face, expression, figure, and surroundings are as vivid now as they were then. What is even more important to me is that, at least during my daily periods of meditation, the feeling of his radiant presence is an actual and as immediate today, is as actual and as immediate today as it was on that first day. So powerful an impression could not have been made nor continued through the numerous vicissitudes of an incarnation which has taken me around the world. If the Maharishi had been an ordinary yogi, much less an ordinary man. I have met dozens of yogis in their Eastern and Western varieties and many exceptional persons. Whatever status is assigned to Maharishi by his followers, or whatever indifference is shown to him by others, my own position is independent and unbiased. It is based upon our private talks in those early days when such things were still possible, before fame brought crowds, upon observations of and conversations with those who were around him, upon his historical record, and finally upon my own personal experiences, whatever they are worth. Upon all this evidence, one fact is incontrovertibly clear, that he was a pure channel for a higher power. I'll read that again and we'll conclude this reading. Upon all this evidence, one fact is incontrovertibly clear, that he was a pure channel for a higher power. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. In the next part of the satsang, we have a self-enquiry session by Shri Dileep Simha ji.
Namo Ramana. Dhyayet Sharada Chandra Sundaramukam Tambraravindechanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhaya Pradakaram Kaupinamotrojvalam Swatmanandarasānubhūti vivasham Sarvanavadyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Hridaya Kuhara Madhye Kevalam Brahmamatram Yahamaham Sakshat Atmarupena Bhati Hrudi Vishamanasa Swam Chimbata Majjatava Pavana Chalanarodha Atmanishto Bhavatvam. We will commence the Atma Vicharam by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. I'll be reading his Upadesham from the book Guruvachaka Kovai, from the chapter Meditation on the Truth. The topic is Objective Awareness. Verse 640. In order to attain the supreme bliss that would shine if we would only keep still, why, oh why, do we wander and suffer intensely? Its purpose, the wandering and suffering, is to enable us to inquire into ourselves and thereby exalt as the reality that has no coming and going, and consequently to experience the lofty heights of bliss. I repeat the verse. In order to attain the supreme bliss that would shine if we would only keep still, why, oh why, do we wander and suffer intensely? Its purpose, the wandering and suffering, is to enable us to inquire into ourselves and thereby exalt as the reality that has no coming and going, and consequently to experience the lofty heights of bliss. Bhagavan often gives this example of a child trying to catch the head of the shadow, and as it stretches its arm, the shadow arm also extends, and the child runs to catch for hours and huge distances, only to see that as the child moves ahead, so does the shadow, and never the shadow arm gets to catch the head of the shadow. Seeing this, the mother asks the child, "What are you doing?" And finally, seeing the child's futile effort, she simply orders the child to keep the hand on her head, on its head, and naturally the shadow arm also touches the shadow head, and the child becomes blissful forever, having found the destination. Here the topic is objective awareness. It is often the same that we do when we are nothing but the pure awareness, having left it as it is, have an objective and run around. The objective may be in the name of self-realization. And when we run, do many things, read many books, Annamalai Swami says this is like shadow trying to catch the shadow. And once this reality comes, and when we rest this entire effort, and this effort only has to get exhausted by trying out all the different ways. And this is how even the Zen Guru puts it. What is the sound of the one hand clap? The disciple has to try many things to come out with what is the one hand clap looks like. And finally, the Guru says, no, that's not it. It's like that. And then when all the knowing and all the doing ceases, having realized that is one is already that. Bhagavan is often said that he is the true meaning of the Asipada, not Tat or Tvam, that to make us realize that we are already that truth. He is the real import of that Asipada. And that's what he makes us realize. And then, when we keep still, then the supreme bliss shines forth. Until that, all this wandering and suffering that we go through, Bhagavan says here, is not really futile. It is his own way for us to recognize the importance of the stillness. It is his way to teach us that the stillness makes the natural truth, the bliss, shine forth. And that is what is being said here. So the awareness, when it loses all its objectiveness and remains still, the bliss of the self shines forth naturally. The immense grace of Bhagavan, with which we have come to this direct path of Atma Vichara, wherein he says, so long as the knower and doer rises in the form of a thought, one should diligently inquire to whom is this thought, who am I, so that the effort maker, the spurious entity, which creates a division where there is none, is repeatedly taken back to the source by the inquiry, who am I, and made to abide in the truth. And with repeated practice, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength and clarity about the truth and the futility of the movements, and therefore starts to enjoy the bliss of the self. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 10 minutes, no matter how many thoughts come, no matter whatever may be the nature of those thoughts, the good, the bad, the spiritual, the ugly, we should diligently inquire all thoughts, to whom is this? Thereupon it becomes clear it is for me. Further inquiring, who am I? Trying to trace the source of the I, source of that I thought, or whatever we refer to as I. The outward bent mind is taken inward and made to subside in the self, which alone is. And by repeated practice, the mind will gain enough strength, the one-pointedness, to remain steadfast, having a clear understanding of the truth, that one is already the very self, and there is nothing apart from it. With repeated practice, Bhagavan assures this clarity and strength, assures on all of us. The immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 10 minutes, let us do Atma Vichara. Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Continuing our attention towards the self, we will move on to the next part of the satsang, where we have a sharing by Sri Venkatesh Deshpande ji on the text Guru Stuti.
We're going to be doing Manana on Atma Bodha. So, just a little correction there. Which one? Oh. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviram Purvavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Dhyanamulam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam, Mantramulam Gurur Vakyam, Mokshamulam Gurur. Namo Ramana. We're doing Manana on Atma Bodha, which is the self-knowledge. So let's try and understand what a Jivan Mukta is like, because we need to understand what are we trying to get to, because they always say, start with the end in mind. You must know what you're going to be at the end of this whole process. So what it says is, with the exhaustion of the momentum of his past action, the Jivan Mukta is ready to depart from the world. His passing away is not like the death of others. The Bhagavad Gita says that he gives up the body as a man gives up his old and worn out clothes. The Bhagavad Gita says that he gives up the body as a man gives up his old and worn out clothes. The Upanishads declare that he comes out of the body purer and brighter like a snake from its slough. So when the snake actually drops its skin, top skin, it looks brighter and purer it looks. His soul does not go out to be reincarnated again, but is absorbed in the absolute Brahma, leaving behind no trace of its separate existence. As milk poured into milk becomes one with the milk, as water poured into water becomes one with the water, as oil poured into oil becomes one with the oil, so the illumined soul absorbed in Brahman becomes one with Brahman. A free soul, even when dwelling in a body, after discarding that body, he attains supreme freedom in Brahman and completely merges in light, peace, knowledge and reality. So that's the gift. That's what we get by doing self-enquiry and gaining self-knowledge. It is absolutely wonderful. So we will do Manana on verse number 1 today. And I request Sapna to kindly chant that, please.
Sure, sir. Tapobihi kshina-papanam shantanam vitaraginaam mumukshunam apekshayah hayam atma-bodha vidiyate तपोभिः शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्षयः हयम् आत्मबोधः विधीयते. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. And composing the Atma Bodha or self-knowledge to serve the needs of those who have been purified through the practice of austerities and who are peaceful in heart, free from cravings and desires of liberation. The very important points that are there in the first normally the first verse itself gives the truth about everything. That's what you see in any of the verses, any of the scriptures. The first verse is most important. So why is he composing this? To serve the needs of those who have purified the practices of austerities and who are peaceful in the heart, free from cravings and desirous of liberation. So the qualification necessary for a student to study Vedanta are enumerated in this verse. They prepare him inner personality for grasping the ideas expounded in the text. The enumeration of these qualifications is not that deter earnest students from the pursuit of spiritual knowledge. The development of the qualification will help them to get the best from the study of the text. The more you acquire these qualities, the better is your understanding of the text. The better the understanding, the greater the ability to acquire these qualities. Thus, the deeper you delve into the subject, the subtler becomes the adjustment of your inner personality and vice versa. No student can claim to have gained a complete mastery over the qualification. So it's beautifully being said in Atma Bodha, that what are the qualifications that are needed for a student who wants to pursue self-knowledge. It says that development of the qualities will help to get the student to understudy. First of all, you need to do study. We know the 3 steps: Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasa. So, as you do more in Shravana, if you keep on reading what is happening, what is being said in the text, then what happens? You have to do Manana. Think, why is it they are asking? Why should I get self-knowledge at all? I'm pretty happy with my life. I'm enjoying the world. Why should I go for self-knowledge? So that question comes up in everybody's minds. Because you see a neighbor. Oh, neighbor is very happy. He is going every evening, going somewhere outside, sitting in a restaurant, enjoying life, wearing the best clothes. And I'm sitting here and trying to, get self-knowledge. So the important thing here is the better the understanding, the greater the ability to acquire these qualities. So when you do more of manana, then what happens is you'll understand, from the gross, you'll start becoming more subtle. So as you become more and more subtle, then what is being said? That the deeper you delve into the subject, the subtler becomes the adjustment of your inner personality and vice versa. So the important thing is the following are the 4 qualifications prescribed for an ideal student. So what should be an ideal student? If somebody asks what should be an ideal student who's pursuing spiritual life, a life in God, then he says annihilation of sins through the practice of austerities. That means you should have done enough of whatever it is, karma, bhakti, raja, jnana, yoga, whatever it is, and done enough for antarkarana shuddhi. Should have cleansed yourself inside by doing austerities. Second, calmness of the mind. The mind should be very calm. It doesn't matter whatever happens. It's perfect. God runs the whole world. You don't have to worry about the world at all. So having calmness of the mind and acceptance is another basic important quality of a devotee, of a student, an ideal student. Freedom from desires. So this is we all understand this Vishaya Vasanas. All of us have Vishaya Vasanas. We want this, we want that. this should happen this way, this should happen, this should not happen this way. Our whole life is governed by this. So when you have desires, you are either, most of the time you are thinking about the past or thinking what should happen in the future, and you are not in the present. You are not experiencing the now. When you are experiencing the now, when life is an unfolding at this point in our lives, then you will have no desires. It's like a bud that is turning into a flower, right? It doesn't say it should be like this. This petal should come out first, or the bee should come now. It doesn't expect anything. It just unfolds. So exactly the same thing. The freedom from desire. You should have absolutely no desire. No good desire, no bad desire, no desires. Just acceptance is a very important thing. Then yearning for liberation. See, the funny thing about this liberation is for what? See, that's why they call it self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is, so when you get self-knowledge, it is not outside. This knowledge is not outside. So liberation means it's not like, oh, I'm going to get liberated and this body is going to go fly away. All this anitya stuff, this body, mind, ego, prana, all this is going to fly away. I'm going to be merged in. No, it's not going to happen like that. The important thing that's why they call it self-realization. When you get self-knowledge, it's realized. You have to realize, oh my God, all my life I was going the wrong way. I was looking for God somewhere else. And I was trying to search him in places where I could never find him. So that's why they say yearning for liberation. Yearning for liberation is what? It's going within. Antarmukha. You become detached from the world, because you know the world is a passing show, and you should become a spectator to this world of movements, all the world that is happening, prapancha, samsara, this maya that's happening in front of our eyes and our ears, nose, mouth, touch and feel, all through all our senses. The world that is happening is maya. It's not true. But then what happens is mind does not allow. It says, hey, there is some truth in that. So then, that's what they say is self-realization. Realize, oh my God, that actually I was always that. That's what the great ones in Gurukuls and all, where olden days is to have these students who used to be in Gurukuls. They'll do intense austerities, and when they are ripe, the Guru will say, Tattvamasi, you are actually that, and they'll have the experience of Aham Brahmasmi, I am actually that. And then the game is all over, because once you understand who you are, then there's nothing else to know. So that's what self-realization is. You must have yearning for that. Yearning for liberation means what? I don't want to come back to this body, another body. I don't want another janma. If I come for another janma, I'll have to stay 9 months in my mother's stomach. It'll be dark out there, dingy out there. And then again I'll pray. In the 9th month, I'll pray to Narayana and tell him to get me out, and he'll get me out. And then again I will get caught up in Maya. And then again this whole it's like a step after step after step. We'll do 10th standard, SSLC, PUC. We'll do all these exams all over again. And again, what happens? Somebody will sit down and say, hey, Venkatesh, now you sit down and do self-enquiry and find out who you really are. So instead of going through this again and again and again, best thing is to inquire. Inquire when? Inquire now. Do it now. Swami Shivananda says, today's message on Jai Shivananda was, do it now. Anything, any good thought, anything, do it now. When you do it now, then what happens is you start living in the now. So that's why he says yearning for liberation. So let's try and see, what does each of this mean? Annihilation of sins through austerities. So people think, oh, tapas means I must go and go to Himalayas, sit there, not eat any food, just pray to God. If you don't eat food for one day, forget about one day, if you don't eat from one meal, you will be thinking of your body only. So for people who are not used to doing fasting, they'll be only thinking of the body. They won't think of God at all. So it says, tapas is not self-torturing practices. on forced self-denial, which frustrates an individual. Tapas envisages two types of disciplines at the physical level. The negative aspect of the discipline is to prevent sensual dissipations by exercising self-control. So, important thing. Say if you're going somewhere, if you continuously keep looking outside, I like that, I like this, I like that. What is happening? The energy that is within you is getting dissipated. It's like a river. If it's flowing, if it has small canals that are taking water out of the river, what's going to happen to the force of the river? It's going to go down. Exactly the same thing. It's all about energy. The energy that if the negative thoughts only dissipate only energy. Like when you get angry, why do you, after getting angry, when you feel tired? Why do you feel tired after getting angry? Because energy has dissipated. It's gone out. The great energy which you have through tapas or whatever it is you have accumulated just goes out. The other one, he says, the positive aspect is that to utilize the conserved energy for higher ideals of life. Tapas, therefore, is the proper utilization of thought force to intelligent self-control. Self-control is painful if it is practiced mechanically without understanding the meaning and purpose behind it. See, self-control, you should not say, "Oh, tomorrow onwards, I'm not going to eat food." The sadhus say, "Eat only fruits and milk. I'm from tomorrow onwards free." Their body is not used to eating fruits and milk. So if you do so, self-control, you have to do it in a gradual manner. Like this morning, the satsang, what we talked about. Do everything in moderation. Everything, whatever you do it in moderation. Eat moderate. Sleep moderate. But important thing is, so that's what he says. Self-control is painful if it is practiced mechanically. You must understand why you're trying to do self-control. But when intelligently applied, it provides self-satisfaction and contentment. That means, like many of us have given up certain things in our lives for what? We wanted to be a master in every situation. We didn't want to be a slave. See, whenever when you say, for example, if you have to have a coffee after a breakfast, you are a slave. 100% you're a slave. If you don't get coffee, you feel like a fish out of water. It's like that. Where's my coffee? Well, a lot of people get agitated. My coffee has not come. Where is my coffee? So that's what it is. So that side of self-control is useless. The important thing really is we need to be, whatever comes our way, whatever comes, be happy with it. If you do that, then what happens? You are a master in every situation. You are no more a slave. The trick of its sadhana is to be the master in every situation. We'll continue to do manana on this verse. It's a very interesting verse because it's all about us, each one of us, and how we should practice to finally get self-knowledge. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We move on to the next part of the satsang. We had a sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rengasamy. As she has not joined yet, we will continue with the meditation on Ramanacentre written by Vasishta Ganapati Muni and which has been compiled and has been titled Ramanacentre by Bhagavan Ramana himself. We are on the verse 21 from Ramanacentre, which are 40 verses of praise on Bhagavan Ramana. Sthanam prapya janmasthanamavapya gupta mahamoyo bedamadutavan bhutanam charatam pritakvidadiyam atmaiva yo basate deham sarvamidam jagatcha vibhavadakramyaya prolasa ye एकस्तं गुरुमूर्तिमानमतरे लम्बोदर भ्रातरं रमणाय लोकगुरवे नमः रमणाय लोकगुरवे नमः जन्मस्थान अहम्मिन ಗೌಪ್ಯ ತಿಳಿದು ಭೇದಗಳ ತೊರೆದವ ನಾನಾವಿಧ ಸ್ಥಾವರ ಜಂಗಮಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆತ್ಮವಾಗಿ ಬೆಳಗುವ ದೇಹವನು ಸಕಲ ಜಗವನು ತನ್ನ ವೈಭವದಿ ಆಕ್ರಮಿಸಿ ಹೊಳೆವವ ಆ ಗುರುಮೂರ್ತಿಗೆ ನಮಿಸಿ ಮಾನವರೇ ಗಣಪತಿಯ ಭ್ರಾತನವ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ ರಮಣನಿಗೆ ಲೋಕ ಗುರುವಿಗೆ ನಮನ. Ganapati Muni is telling, let us all salute to that Guru. All humans pay attention and let us all bow and pay our obeisance to that Guru who is none other than the brother of Lambodara. And who is a Guru? A Guru is the one who guides us with his light, who removes the darkness of ignorance and who shows the light and the path to attain fullness of that light. And Ramana is that Guru who has understood this truth, who has seen this light, has the darshana of that Sat, and who is ever abiding in that Sat. So, he is the knower of the truth, and he has come to reveal that path to attain the truth to all the world. He is that Sadguru. So come, let us all pay our obeisance to that Supreme Guru, says Ganapati Muni. And how has Ramana attained that state of being the Sadguru? By knowing the source of the I thought. This is this I thought which creates various differences in the manifestation. But our Vedas say there is only one. There is nothing else apart than that one. And that one you may call it Brahman, that you may call self, that you may call spirit, that alone exists. And the various differences that we see is only an illusion. And the example that we know is that when the white light, which is only white in color, but when that passes through a prism, it multiplies and it becomes the various colors of the rainbow. But if one traces back from these various colors, one traces back to the source from where these various lights are coming, one understands that we are, that the light is only white. There is no difference in that light. But when it passes through a prism, it manifests as the various colors. In science, we learn that the sunlight, which is only white in color, but within itself, it has all these 7 colors. So when it falls on an object, when we perceive that object absorbs some part of the light and it reflects some part of the light. And that part which is reflected is what we perceive. That's why we say the roses are red, the leaves are green, because the leaf would absorb all the other colors except the green which it reflects. So we see the leaves are green in color. When you see an apple, it absorbs all the other colors but only reflects the red color. So we see an apple as red. So there is only one light and it is only white. But we perceive the various colors and hues and sizes and shapes only by perceiving the reflection. So Ramana says, don't get caught up in the reflection. Turn towards the source of this light. Turn towards that source. Similarly, Ramana says, the prism through which the light of consciousness is passing through is the prism of the mind or the ego. Because the white light of the consciousness is passing through this prism of the mind, we perceive the various differences. We see everything as different beings, and each one made up of different qualities. But when one stops perceiving these differences, and once one makes an attempt to turn towards the source of that light, beyond the prism of the mind or the ego, one ends up at the source of the I thought, the source which is pure light, without any colors, without any differences. When one merges at that source of the I thought, the pure consciousness, one becomes like Ramana. One becomes the light. One becomes the Guru. And such a Guru stops seeing the differences, but sees that everything is manifestation of the same power. Once, when a foreign devotee, Mercedes D'Acosta, asked Bhagwan Ramana, Ramana, you say that everything is one in one consciousness. Is that true? And Ramana replied, absolutely. And Mercedes D'Acosta continued, Ramana, I see clear differences. Do you think I, you, and my servant over here, my little servant who is standing beside us, are we all the same? And Ramana, with a smile, replied, yes, I, you, your servant, and also those monkeys on the tree are all one in one consciousness. And Mercedes Acosta said, oh, but monkeys are not our kind. They are different. Ramana told, but in one consciousness, we are all one. The same consciousness that shines within each one of us is shining within the monkeys too. And Ramana, in his life, he has shown that the same consciousness shines in the plants and the trees too. In one of the references, Ramana says that the trees are the standing man and man are the walking trees. So Ramana saw the same consciousness, the same Arunachala in every being, moving or standing. And this truth Ramana knew from his infancy. Ramana says, before I could lisp the words Amma or Appa, I had this Purana in my heart, Arunachala, Arunachala. And this Purana of Arunachala is not different from Aham, Aham's Purana. Because Ramana himself in Arunachala Aksharamanamalai says, Arunachalamena Ahame Ninaipavar Ahattai Veraruppai Arunachala. Arunachalame Aham. Arunachala is not different from the I, Spurana in our heart. And Ramana in his infancy, he felt this should be natural to everyone. Just like how we are breathing, maybe this Arunachala Spurana, the Spurana of the I within every being is very, very natural to everyone. This he knew from his infancy. And later he only played the Leela of Jnanodaya, where he faced the death and understood that what dies is only the body, but that Arunachala Spurana, that Aham Spurana is deathless. It is like the dynamo which is ever creating this energy, the Avesham, that power within is me. And he was completely absorbed in that light, pure light of consciousness, which is Aham Aham Spurana or Arunachala. And from there, to reveal this truth to everyone, he was drawn to Arunachala. There he stayed, ever abiding as the self, spreading the joy of being ever abiding in the self. This truth was shown to us by that Guru Ramana. So Ganapati Muni says, let us all salute to this Guru Ramana who has come amidst us to teach us this truth, to understand the true source of the I. And what is the tool that Bhagavan Ramana says? Whenever the I manifests itself as the difference, as a thought, do not pursue that thought. As soon as the thought arises, ask for whom it does arise. The very moment the thought arises, ask for whom it does arise. And the obvious answer is, the thoughts are arising for me. When we understand this truth, then our attention turns within towards ourselves and quickly turn within and ask the question, who am I? When we ask this question, the I slowly and steadily merges at its source, Janmasthanam, and at that moment all the differences are lost and we become the pure light. This is what Ramana is teaching us through his avatara, through his manifestation as the Loka Guru. Let us all pay our salutations to that Loka Guru, says Ganapati Muni in this verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We have a sharing by Dr. Sarada on the Ashtottara. Before that, we would hear the chanting of Arunachala Aksharamanamalai, a few verses chanted by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh Srinivasan. We have the Aksharamanamalai chanting by Srimati V. Radha and Vallabh Srinivasan.
Namo Ramana. Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala. பொடியாமயக்கியன் போதத்தை பறித்து உன் போதத்தை காட்டினை அருணாச்சலா. போக்கும் வரவுமில் பொது வெளியினருள் போராட்டம் காட்டருணாச்சலா. பௌதிகமாமுடல் பற்று அற்று நாளும் முன் பவிச கண்டருள் அருணாச்சலா. மலை மருந்திட நீ மலைத்திடவோ அருள் மலை மருந்தாயொளிர் அருணாச்சலா. மானம் கொண்டுருபவர் மானத்தை அழித்த விமானம் இல்லாதொளிர் அருணாச்சலா. மிஞ்சிடில் கெஞ்சிடும் கொஞ்ச வரிவனியான் வஞ்சியாதருள் என்னை அருணாச்சலா. மிகாமன் இல்லாமல் ஆகாத்தலை கலமாகாம காத்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. முடியடி காணா முடிவிடுத்தனை நேர் முடிவிட கட நிலை அருணாச்சலா. மூங்கிலின் முன்காட்டு முகுர மகாதனை தூக்கி அணைந்தருள் அருணாச்சலா. மெய்யகத்தின் மனமென் மலரணையில் நம்மை கலந்திட அருள் அருணாச்சலா. மேன்மேல் தாழ்ந்திடு மெல்லியர் சேர்ந்து நீ மேன்மையுற்றனையன் அருணாச்சலா. மெய்மய நீத்தருள் மையினலுனது உண்மை வசமாக்கினை அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ 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 அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா. அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி. அக்ஷரமணம் மாலை வாழி. நமோ ரமண.
Namo Ramana. We have a sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rengasamy on the work Devika Lotram Jnana Vichara Padalam, translated to Tamil by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi.
ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very graciously given to us by Bhagavan in Tamil. And the last satsang we saw Bhagavan saying, a mumukshu who is interested in jnana alone, jnana only, should not give importance to attachments towards the place where he lives, attachment towards the caste and the attachments in which one is born. தேசமும் ஜாதி முதலாம் இவற்றை சேர்ந்தனவும் மாசு அகல் வர்ணம் ஆசிரம மன்னினவும் பேசும் இப்பாவனைகளை அகற்றி. You need not talk about the pride of a country, caste and related rules and relations that has to be followed in that caste. Instead, Bhagavan says, leave off everything and be remaining in your natural state. Be in the self, be in the Atma itself. தன் நிலையின் பாவனையே பற்றி என்றும் பழகு. Practice always to be in your natural state, abiding in the self. Do abhyasa to abide in the self always. If that is done, other worldly things will vanish automatically. In the next stanza, Bhagavan beautifully says, Uruvan nam yerku uriyan or uruvan il. In this stanza, Bhagavan establishes that self alone exists. There is only I and nothing else. Uruvan nan yerku uriyan or uruvan il. I can see no one who belongs to me. Yes, of course. We may say, my family members are there, my friends are there, my teachers are there. But what is the guarantee that they will be with us forever? One day or the other, we have to depart. So how can I claim that they belong to me? So, Yerka Uriyan or Uruvan Il. Do I belong to someone else? The next question. Do I belong to someone? Can anyone claim that I am their possession? Bhagavan says that is also not possible. Yanum matra oruvarukku uriyan il. Yanum matra oruvarukku uriyan il. There is no one who can claim me as their own. Okay, I am not a possession of anyone. Can it be like this? Can anyone be mine? Will it be possible for me to claim my possession over anyone? I can see no one like that whom I can claim as mine, says the Lord. In all angles, it is certain we can see no one except me. Only I am there. Apart from I, there is nothing else. So, Bhagavan makes it very clear that my true nature is Egam. That awareness without any duality, that is none other than Atma. What is the nature of Atma then? It is self-illuminating. Other that Atma, it can see no vastu. Other than Atma, there is no vastu. So Bhagavan, who is in that state, says, Yadayam Kandile. I have not seen anything. Though there are various varied objects in the world, Atma sees everything as Atma only. It does not see the varied nature of the object. Palavidamai pesi enna பிரிவற்ற அகண்ட பரபிரம்மம் தானே மாதவா நீ நிஜமான ஸ்வரூபம் ஸ்ரீ புகீதை. அந்நிய பாவத்தில் அவன் அகம் ஆகும் அனன்ய பாவமே உந்தி பெற அனைத்திலும் உத்தமம் உந்தி பெற. In Upadesa Undiyar also Bhagavan says that best bhava is ananya bhava. Among all that, uttama bhava. Stanza, Bhagavan says, believe strongly that I am Brahma Swarupam. Nane Brahmam, Nane Parabrahmam. Who made me realize this truth? The Guru. Who is this Guru? He is the Jnana Swarupa, who is Ishvara Swarupa himself, who is the Karanakarta of the world. நானே பரபிரம்மம், நாதன் உலகுக்கு ஈசன் ஆனாம், இந்நிச்சயம் ஆர் குருடன் தானே நன் முத்தனாம். One who accepts this truth and abides himself in that truth is the Mahapurusha. Andri muran vadiyat sel gurudan. Otherwise, if this is not the case, if he is a person who is in the other path, will fall in the worldly attachments for sure. Bhagavan says, if this is not the case, if does not, he thinks that he is everything, muran vadiyat செயல் குருடன் பெத்தனாம் என்று நீ பேன். Because when one recognizes Guru as Ishvara Swarupa, he attains the state of Mukti. What does Guru do? He acts both from outside and inside. From outside, he pushes the sadhaka's mind inward from the outside world, which is loitering in the outside world. And from inside, what does the Guru do? Pulls the mind and makes it abide in the self. Makes the mind taste the Nija Swarupa, the Ananda which is prevailing in the Atma. Bhagavan says, only when it reaches the Nija Swarupa, one realizes that Shakti of the outside and the inside Guru. Because Ishvara manifests himself as Guru and does all these work. So, Guru is none other than the Atma. So, Atma, Guru and Ishvara are all the same. When this is realized, one realizes himself as Atma. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Before we go on to the sharing by Dr. Sarada on the verses written by Vishwanatha Swami in Ramana Ashtottaram, which is a litany of 108 names on Bhagavan Ramana, I would like to announce that tomorrow, which is October 9th, we, as every Paurnami at the Ramana Maharshi Shrine, we are having the Paurnami celebration. And tomorrow is a very, very special Paurnami because it is the Sharat Paurnami. Jagadeeshwar Shastri, who has composed the Ramana Sahasranama in the Dhyana Shloka, says, Dhyayet Sharada Chandra Sundaramukam Tamraravindekshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojwalam Swatmanandarasанubhuti vivasham Sarvanavatyangakam Shrimantam Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasanadhyasitam Dhyayet Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Ramaneshwaram. He describes Bhagavan Ramana's beautiful face as the Sharat Chandra, and we meditate on that Sharat Chandra with the lotus-like eyes, who bestows Vara and Abhaya. That beautiful face with that bewitching smile and the eyes which is filled with compassion bestows to us the greatest blessing, the Vara and the Abhaya. And he is ever abiding in the Yogasana. He is ever in the union with that self. Of that Ramana we meditate. And tomorrow is that Sharat Purnima. In the evening at 6:45, we have a special Bharatanatyam Ramananjali Nritya offering by two young students of Bharatanatyam, Tanushri and Shraddha, who are disciples of Natyacharya Vincent Paul, who is very much a part of the various dance productions of Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning and who has been the senior student of Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning. And that will be followed by the Ashtottara puja to Bhagavan, and we go around the Sannidhi of Bhagavan Ramana. That Sannidhi is none other than the Arunachala, and we go around it singing Bhagavan Ramana's Arunachala Aksharamanamalai in the form of the Girivalam or Giri Pradakshina. This is the program which is happening tomorrow, October 9th, Sunday at 6:45. And the next upcoming program is a Bharatanatyam Rangolasa offering, the first maiden full-fledged concert of Ramananjali Nritya by a student of Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, Kumari Bhagyashri. This is happening on October 15th in the evening at Ramana Maharshi Heritage Auditorium. Please do be part of these beautiful offerings to Bhagavan. Now we have a sharing on Ramana Ashtottara by Dr. Sarada.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, in this part of the satsang, we are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara. We have covered the verses which are also biographical in nature. We have covered the namas which has led us right up to Bhagavan coming to Arunachala, surrendering himself, saying, Father, I have come, and being immersed in what Osborne describes as seeming penance, but what Bhagavan says is the true penance. Aham apetakam nija vibhanakam mahadidam tapo ramana bhagyam. This is the greatest penance, says Bhagavan. That is, when the ego is destroyed and the self shines forth in all its fullness. Such was the brilliance of this boy. Bhagavan says that those who are aware of the beauty of self-knowledge would automatically be attracted to such a sage. That's why we found that great seekers of truth, like even the dancing girl Ratnama, she was sweetly attracted to Bhagavan. She was having her own spiritual stature to be attracted to Bhagavan. And of course, Seshadri Swami knew. And he says he is once later related to T.P. Ramachandra, who was his attendant at Sri Ramanashramam and a great devotee of Bhagavan. He talks to him about his grandfather. He says, your grandfather used to come and sit in front of me for some time. He used to visit the Subramanya shrine, come to the temple, visit the Subramanya shrine. He was a leading advocate, probably he was a very well-known person in Tiruvannamalai in those days. And many people used to come to his house. And he used to come and sit in front of me silently. And I was also not speaking. I was a young boy, says Bhagavan. And he describes very beautifully how on one occasion, T.P. Ramachandra's grandfather forcibly took him home for a meal. He says, every day he used to come and sit silently in front of me and go away. But one day he suddenly came and told me, get up, come. And he said he was very well built, huge person. And I was a young boy and I was not speaking. I did not know what to do. So I just followed him. He says that was the one occasion where I was served a full meal in a house in Tiruvannamalai. But otherwise, he was in that state of penance. And Bhagavan says, when a flower blossoms, it does not send out invitation to the bees. The bees come automatically. They just come as soon as the flower blossoms. The bees come automatically. No invitation needs to be sent. In this way, the seekers of truth, there were many who came, but hardly we say many. Many means what? Now we are looking at lakhs and crores and things like that. But there were a few who got attracted to Bhagavan and came. But on the whole, it was unknown. His presence was unknown and he was lost only in the bliss of the self. He stayed in the Patala Linga, we saw. And after that, he was lifted out of the Patala Linga shrine and he was placed in the Subramanya shrine, which is near the 1,000-pillared Mantapa. And after that, he stayed for a few days in the Vahana Mantapa. That is where all the Vahanas were kept, all the vehicles. When we have special occasions, when we have festivals, big festivals like the Kartikeya festival, each of the gods come out on their divine vehicles. So these are all very beautiful big vehicles and placed in the chariot room, the Vahana Mantapam it is called. There was a huge hall itself for that. Like the 1,000-pillared hall, there is a Vahana hall. And Bhagavan says he was in such a state at that time that he would not know the difference between day and night. We say the Nama Tapomayaya Namaha. What is tapas? See, tapas, not out of any yearning to reach anywhere, to do anything, not tapas to attain, but the effulgence of self-abidance. That is the tapas which Bhagavan describes. And in that state of tapas, Bhagavan was there. He did not know day from night. He says he would open his eyes sometimes and find the body in one place in the Vahana Mantapam. And when he opened his eyes another time, his body was somewhere else. And he never knew how he had moved. And that he says sometimes it was perhaps I would even find myself under some of the Vahanas. I do not know how I would have crept there like a lizard, he says. So he would have got into some kind of an odd position also without any consciousness of the body. He was just there. And the body was there, sometime here, sometime there. And I think that during that period, after all, he had kept one kaupina for himself. He had torn out one piece of cloth, and where would that stand? Even that must have got tattered, and he was literally Digambara. He was literally like that newborn babe born into the bliss of the self, just like that, having nothing of his own. He was in that extraordinary state of tapas. And then he says that the chief priest requested him. He gave him a new kaupina and requested him to wear it, and then he wore that. So Bhagavan was in that state of effulgence, and in that state he was there in the Vahana Mantapa. He was there in the garden of the Arunachaleshwara temple, and he was totally unconcerned about anything. So the next nama is Udasinaya Nama, totally indifferent to all needs of the body. Now this Udasinatva, in Ramana Gita, Bhagavan says that to practice self-enquiry and reap the full benefits of self-enquiry, one must have indifference to the body. One must have distaste for sense experiences, for objective experiences. One must be totally disinterested, says Bhagavan. But that is a state of sadhana where one has indifference because one is seeking the self. But Bhagavan's indifference is very different from that. It is indifference which was there, the Udasinatva was there, from ever after he experienced that abidance in the self, from that moment of the awakening, the full dawning of knowledge, which happened on the 17th of July 1896 in his uncle's house, younger uncle's house, paternal uncle Subbu Ayer's house in Madurai. After that, Bhagavan says he completely lost interest in everything. He lost interest in studies. He lost interest in sports, which he was very interested in. He lost interest in food. And he says prior to that, he was particular. He had specific tastes in eating. But after that, he completely lost interest, and he would eat whatever he was fed. He would not bother whether his friends beat him up or treated in whatever way they treated him. He did not mind. He was completely indifferent. So from that moment onwards, he became Udasina, completely indifferent. Udasina is completely indifferent to everything external. As I said, different from the indifference which we may cultivate in order to have dispassion to be dispassionate, we may cultivate that, we may try to not be worried about the food we eat, try not to be worried about the clothes we wear. We try to take our attention away from sense objects, to not worry, not bother about what is happening in daily life, in order that our attention may not get distracted and would come back to the self. But Bhagavan's Udasinatva was not like that. He was so much absorbed in the bliss of the self that other things ceased to matter altogether. Nothing mattered. His body also did not matter. What people did to him, whether some people were good to him or called him for a meal. He says, this happened and I was forced to go for the meal. He narrates it with affection, but he does not say, oh, the food was good or bad. Food was given by Ratnama every day. What was the nature of the food? We do not know. Only one meal is described by him. The first bhiksha which he got from Arunachaleshwara. After that, what he got to eat, we do not know. He was given, we know, he was given milk, Abhisheka, to Mother Apita Kuchaba. There also it is Goddess Prasada. It was Arunachaleshwara Prasada. The Prasada Buddhi is absolutely vibrant, but the attention to what is being eaten, what is happening to the body is totally not there. And sometimes when attention is not there also, he is not bothered about what happens. It is said that Uddandi Nayanar became his attendant. Those days, he was doing a business of transporting people from Tiruvannamalai to his village nearby, and maybe to other some pilgrimage places on his bullock cart. So he would come and go. Seeing this young sage, he decided to take care of him, because people were even playing pranks. When Bhagavan was in the flower garden, where he was under the oleander trees, and there also Bhagavan says the trees they are short trees, like shrubs, and the branches were cut and they were protruding. So he says, sometimes I would move under those branches also like a lizard. Without any knowledge, I would be under one tree or another tree. So he was in the flower garden. Then he was under the Ilippai tree, also in the presence of the temple, Arunachaleshwara temple. And there it is that Ratnama came regularly and gave food to him. She had taken a vow to eat only after feeding Bhagavan. She was the first of the kind to do so. Later we will find Echamal did the same, Mudalayar Party did the same. So Ratnama was there, but she could not wake him up. In those days, Bhagavan would have his eyes closed. He was so indifferent to the world. He says, it was as if my eyelids were glued to each other. I could hardly open them, and he was like that. So he had to be woken up, and then food had to be given to him. She brought a cousin of hers, a young lad. Ratnama brought him, had Bhagavan woken up and then fed him. Then that cousin was not allowed to come by his people. Then she convinced her mother to come with her. And then Bhagavan says she did this seva until Bhagavan moved to Gurumurtam. So Bhagavan was there, and it is there that, he was so indifferent, and the mischievous boys continued to play pranks. And one day, actually, one boy, he relieved himself on Bhagavan. And Bhagavan says that the smell from the codpiece, from the loincloth, made him aware that this had happened. So he was totally without any sense of anger, disgust. Of course, fear was totally not there. Total indifference to everything, because the bliss of the self alone was reigning supreme in him. So he says, Tapomayaya namaha, Udasinaya namaha. Totally indifferent. Not indifference as a mental concept. That Bhagavan never accepts. He says, One must not be indifferent towards anything in life. One must not, that becomes ashraddha. One should not be indifferent towards anything in life. Anything. Kanakama, whose centenary is now happening, birth centenary year is going on. And she would say, Bhagavan was particular. Then one must not be indifferent to anything. Because even if one is indifferent to the smallest thing, that indifference may transfer itself to the sadhana, to the self-enquiry. So Bhagavan's indifference was just a fruition of the abidance, the constant abidance, made him indifference to everything other than the self. And it is the glorious state of self-abidance that we get to see in this young boy who is there lost in that bliss. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
We conclude today's satsang with the Ramana Ashtottara puja and Aarti to Bhagavan. The puja will be conducted at the altar at Sri Dileep Simha Ji's home, and the chanting of Ramana Ashtottara will be done by the RMCL team. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावली अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशेः यस्योर्मि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। ॐ महासे नमः, ॐ शेन जाताय नमः, ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः, ॐ गुरवे नमः, ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः, ॐ अहौजसे नमः, ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः, ॐ जगद्हितावताराय नमः, ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः, ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः, ॐ सुन्दरार्यथफप्पलाय नमः, ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः, ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः, ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः, ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः, ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः, ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः, ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः, ॐ तीव्राय नमः, ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः, ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः, ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः, ॐ तपोमयाय नमः, ॐ उदासीनाय नमः, ॐ महायोगिने नमः, ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः, ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः, ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसम्रम्भाय नमः, ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः, ॐ सवित्रे नमः, ॐ स्थिराय नमः, ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः, ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः, ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः, ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः, ॐ चूर्णिताकिलविभ्रमाय नमः, ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः, ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः, ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः, ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः, ॐ विराजचलाकृतये नमः, ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः, ॐ पूर्णाय नमः, ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः, ॐ गम्भीराय नमः, ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः, ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः, ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः, ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः, ॐ धीराय नमः, ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः, ॐ स्वराजे नमः, ॐ महर्षये नमः, ॐ भगवते नमः, ॐ ईड्याय नमः।
ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः, ॐ विमलाय नमः, ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः, ॐ आप्ताय नमः, ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः, ॐ समदृशे नमः, ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः, ॐ सत्याय नमः, ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः, ॐ अप्तविक्रमाय नमः, ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः, ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः, ॐ मृदुभाषिते नमः, ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः, ॐ श्री शोणाचलोद्भूत स्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः, ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः, ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः, ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताग्रसरोरुहाय नमः, ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्नसंशयाय नमः, ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः, ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः, ॐ सौम्याय नमः, ॐ आत्मवते नमः, ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थान आराध्याय नमः, ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः, ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः, ॐ महाभागाय नमः, ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः, ॐ विनताय नमः, ॐ विनुताय नमः, ॐ विप्राय नमः, ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः, ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः, ॐ दर्शनादकसंहारिणे नमः, ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः, ॐ उच्चान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः, ॐ स्मरणात्मन्दमोचकाय नमः, ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचन्दांशवे नमः, ॐ संसाराणावतारकाय नमः, ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः, ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः, ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः, ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः, ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः, ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः, ॐ गुहाय नमः, ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः, ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः, ॐ भवरोगविषज्वराय नमः, ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः, ॐ देवतमाय नमः, ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः, ॐ सेनान्ये नमः, ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
श्री रमण भगवते नमः। श्री रमणाष्टोत्तरशतनाम पूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाह विवशस्थादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीव हित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संगिये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिव प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡು ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಗಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ नमो महर्षि बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।